This week on The Game Adventure, Xbox comes out swinging with a strategy to hit 1 billion users in the next 4 years, while it turns out that Halo plays best on the PS5. But Mario Sunshine is finally headed to the Switch Online. Let's go. The Game Adventure Podcast is a family-friendly show that keeps you current in the world of video games. We'll talk about current developer and tech announcements, go through the best ways to play our favorite retro games, and cover an always up-to-date wish list of games to keep an eye out for. We're doing it every week and always in under an hour, so let's go. What is up, everybody? Hope you're having a fantastic week. Welcome to the first official episode of the Game Adventure Podcast in video format. This is the first time that I'm really putting this out on YouTube. I figured I've got a lot of videos that I've watched to kind of make sure that I'm informed for this show every week, and so maybe it would be helpful to have those to share with you as well. Been working on this for a while, and I'm pretty excited that it's all finally starting to come together. If you are listening to the audio version of this, you're missing a couple of the videos, but it's still just fine in audio form. I listen to most of my favorite podcasts via audio, but hey, it's on YouTube if you want to watch it there as well. So if you're just joining me for the first time via YouTube, welcome. I'm glad you're here. This is a show that I kind of put together a number of months back, earlier this spring in 2026, because I couldn't really find a gaming podcast that really kind of covered the kinds of games that I wanted to hear about across all different platforms, but also did it in kind of a short amount of time. I didn't want to listen to an hour and a half long podcast. I wanted like under an hour for sure. So my aim with this podcast in particular is to always be under an hour, always be family friendly because my kids love to talk about this stuff as well. I wanted a safe place for them to interact with these video games, and always be as positive as possible in an industry that sometimes is not so positive. So with that, let's jump over to our first segment, which is the industry news. Xbox has been in the news a ton over the last couple of weeks, and not all for good reasons. They've laid off a ton of people. They've closed a number of studios. They've kind of made a couple of studios go independent, and then those studios have laid off people. So it's been kind of a rough time period for Xbox as they try to kind of reset their business to be successful going forward. And unfortunately, that has had an impact on a lot of people and a lot of jobs. What they've started to talk about this week is their plan going forward for what they actually want to do, and it is incredibly ambitious. They are proposing that they want to reach 1 billion, with a B, daily active users in the next 4 years. So by 2030, they want to have 1 billion daily active users. That's like an eighth of the world's population. That's a lot of people. But they're kind of trying to make this happen all the while their console sales are falling and their Game Pass revenue is also falling. So they've kind of, Asha Sharma presented these 4 C's, which are their priorities for the next couple of years. This is their plan to do that, and return to growth by 2027. So they've got basically 5 months to go from losing a bunch of money and falling apart to starting to make money again and doing positive things. The 4 C's are core, content, creation, and connection. We only really have a memo at this point from them, so we don't know exactly what that means, but core means they want to strengthen the Xbox platform, specifically led by this console experience. So they are not backing down from the console experience, where Phil Spencer a couple of years ago kind of said, we're going to bring Xbox to everything. And then there was the infamous, anything can be an Xbox ad campaign. Your phone can be an Xbox if you're streaming to it. And now they're kind of coming full circle on that and doing a 180 and saying, which is not full circle. 180, kids, is half of a circle. I know that. Give me a break. It's early, okay? Basically, they're turning that around 180 degrees and saying, yeah, an Xbox console is an Xbox. And there's a reason that we're a console manufacturer. There's some good things about that. The second C is content. They're really focusing on great games and turning them into franchises. So a lot remains to be seen around that. Connection to their 4th C, which is connection, which means they want to use the world of TV and film and consumer products and global kind of partnerships to make these game franchises more than just a game on your Xbox, but a whole world of entertainment. And then the final one is creation. And they really want to focus on Minecraft with this. So games like Fortnite and Roblox have kind of been these like spaces for creators to spend time, and Minecraft is definitely up there among them. I would even argue that Minecraft is bigger, but they want Minecraft to be definitively the world's creator platform. Like, this is where creators are making new experiences, similar to Roblox, but hopefully in a much safer way, especially for kids. So that's their goal, their aim. I think that's what good leadership looks like, is setting your aim high and going for the things that you think matters, because unless you really aim high, you're not really going to succeed high. You're going to end up failing if you don't ever aim, like, shoot for the stars. You know, I really think that's what Xbox needs to do, because doing more of the same that they've done so far has not led to success for the brand. So it's time for them to make some changes. And some of those changes are going to mean some changes to Game Pass. You cannot sell a console at a loss, anticipating that you're going to make money on the software, and then sell a product that tells people don't buy software, just subscribe to our subscription service. That also doesn't make money. So you got to make money somewhere in order to keep doing the business. And that's what Xbox is trying to do. The other piece of industry news this week was that Halo Campaign Evolved released, which is the original Halo game, completely remade in a new engine. It looks fantastic. I can attest that it plays fantastic. Lots and lots of positive feedback on this campaign. But an interesting tidbit is that the place it actually looks the best isn't on an Xbox. It's on the PS5 Pro. And that is kind of funny. Like, it's kind of hilarious that an Xbox franchise plays better on the competition's platform. Like, I find that funny. But also, I feel like people are focusing too much on this. A lot of the industry chatter on the various podcasts and videos and stuff is kind of missing the point of what Halo is supposed to be. Like, look at what actually is happening here. This franchise that I grew up loving is now available to people on all of these different platforms, and with crossplay, you can play together this fantastic game. So it looks better than it ever has before. It plays just as well, and more people are able to do it. And the thing that we want to focus on is, like, nitpicking that it looks a little better on a PS5 Pro than it does on an Xbox. I feel like some of those folks are maybe missing the point a little bit. But I'm really excited for this fantastic game to be available to more people. In the tech update, we want to look at some of the technology changes and announcements that impact gaming. And one of those announcements this week was GPU prices are starting to go up again from the two biggest companies. That would be AMD and NVIDIA. And so they've said, we're going to actually start to increase the price on our graphics cards. Meanwhile, companies like the console manufacturers, Sony in particular, this week said, don't worry, we have enough memory stockpiled, so we don't need to raise prices until 2027, which at first has you going like, whew, that's good news, until you realize that 2027 is only 5 months away. So they're saying, don't worry, for 5 months at least, we're not going to raise the prices on our last generation of consoles, which is not comforting at all. Sony, just don't even say anything next time, okay? We'll feel better about just not knowing. So the truth is, console prices have gone up. Graphics cards prices are going up. I kind of did a little research and looked for, like, what are the two graphics cards from those companies that would be the most compelling to buy if you were, building a rig and you wanted your computer to be strong enough to. My criteria was, can it play AAA games at least, like, low settings? Like, can I even get in on AAA games? The top tier, and can it play most things at medium or better settings? And the two that kind of rise to the top from these two companies are the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 5050. This one is great for DLSS. It has a lot of stability. It launched, for example, with a price tag of about $250, and right now it's retailing around $290. So the price increase has already affected these, and these companies are saying that's going to go even higher in the weeks to come. From AMD, they have the Radeon RX 9060 XT. This one got a lot of praise for having 16 gigabytes of VRAM, and it launched for a little higher, so it launched at about $349. But believe it or not, it's pushing closer to about $470, a very large increase. So the truth is, if you want to get in on the top tier of graphics cards, that's going to be out of range for most people. PC gamers are kind of used to this. We're used to the prices on these components being very high. And so I don't know that it's going to impact that particular community quite as much as the people who are used to cheap consoles that are subsidized by those companies. So that's what's happening there. The Steam Machine, on the other hand, if you want kind of a blend between the console and a PC, Valve has jumped into the console wars with this fantastic Steam Machine. It's this tiny little 6-inch square box and packs a punch, and they have recently said that they're going to be able to fulfill those console reservations for that, if you want to call it a console. Is it a computer? Is it a console? I think it's both. So if you reserved a Steam Machine, don't worry. They said we are fulfilling those reservations by the end of 2026. So that's good news. That's pretty much it in the way of like new tech announcements this week. So let's run back in time to the Retro Rerun. In the Retro Rerun segment, I like to talk about the best way to play some of my favorite old games, the new remasters of games that are coming out, new hardware that makes it easier to play old games. So that's kind of what this segment's all about. And it's very exciting this week because they finally announced one of my favorite games of all time on the GameCube is finally coming to the Nintendo Switch Online. That is Super Mario Sunshine. Mixed feelings about this, actually, because this is perfect timing to introduce this game to my kids. It is available via Nintendo Switch Online, so if you have that, it's going to be available sometime in August. And this is the truest version of the game that is being emulated, so it looks exactly like it did pretty much on the GameCube. So if that's what you're going for, this is probably the best way to play it. But I would argue that maybe there are other better ways to play this game. If you remember, this isn't the first time this game has come to Switch. This came to Switch via the Super Mario 3D All-Stars package that was sold in very limited quantities. So if you got it when it came out back around 2020, it was a package of the Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, and Mario Galaxy. Since then, you have releases of Mario Galaxy and Mario Galaxy 2, but that was like almost a kind of remastered version of those games. It was very clean looking, looked very nice. So arguably, that's actually the better way to play this if you had one of those cartridges when those came out, or you bought it digitally. They actually delisted the digital version on March 31st of 2021, which is weird that we have this better version of this game and it's just not available anymore. So arguably, you could play it via that version if you got it in the first place. I don't know why Nintendo hasn't made this version available digitally for us to purchase. I would spend $20 or more to buy Super Mario Sunshine via the version that came out on the Switch. But really, if you have the game and you are into emulation, I would maybe argue that that is the best possible way to play Super Mario Sunshine. So you can emulate this game at 4K resolution. You can use upscaling. You can widescreen it. You can also add achievements via retro achievements for this game. So if I were going to play through this game again, I might actually play it via emulation. And I know that's a complex thing to kind of get set up for some people. But that might actually be the best way to play this game. And what's maybe a little frustrating to me is that the Switch 2 is powerful enough to actually emulate this game really well. So I wish that Nintendo had given us a kind of remaster. Look at the way that the original Halo game was remastered in the Master Chief Collection. And they even gave you a switch to toggle back and forth between the original version and the remastered version. They could easily do that with a game like Super Mario Sunshine, but maybe that's more love than Nintendo has for this game. And certainly I have more love for this game than Nintendo maybe does at this point. But I'm excited that it's coming to the Nintendo Switch Online this month. A cool story that I saw this month was a PC gamer that was taking physical media and making it themselves. So this is kind of a growing trend. There's a couple folks online that I saw. One guy that in particular was a guy by the name of Peculiar Programmer on YouTube. And he's basically taking these PC games and manually burning them to CDs, to Blu-ray discs or DVDs, and then using a site like the Cover Project to print out custom box art, custom covers for the disc. It's really, really cool. And I think this is neat that if big companies aren't going to give us physical media, that some gamers say, I'm going to solve this problem for myself. I'm going to make this part of the hobby, making physical games for myself. So that's an option out there if you want to get into a little bit of arts and crafts as well as video games. This has kind of turned into the month of the retro handheld. Over the last month or so, we've had news about 3, maybe 4 major retro platforms that are coming back into view. So the first is the ModRetro M64. That's M64, not N64. This is a FPGA console. So a console that was created by Palmer Luckey, who is a guy who used to work he founded Oculus in 2012. Before that was sold to Meta to make the Oculus. And so he's kind of become like the early face of the modern VR boom. But if you can call it a boom, I would say it's kind of struggling to take off. But what he's actually done is gone back the opposite direction. And he's created this N64 cartridge player. It has 0 lag hardware accuracy, so it's not using emulation. And they're even making putting games back onto new N64 cartridges that will work in this ModRetro M64. So you can get it now. It is shipping. It's a little bit pricey. It's about $230, but it is available at modretro.com and at GameStop, which, hey, if GameStop wants to get in on this kind of retro stuff, they might actually find that this is where their lost soul is found. That's my thought anyway. Another one that's a handheld that we talked about last week is the Retroid Pocket Nova. This is a kind of 4x3 handheld, has a 4.5-inch AMOLED screen, beautiful screen, a lot of power coming from the Snapdragon processor, so it will run up to GameCube and PS2 without too much trouble. This availability began in July to ship. You can get it directly from GoRetroid.com. That is a Chinese company, and so in my experience, it takes usually a couple of weeks to get those directly from China, and just be prepared for the shipping time to be really, really long. Price on that one is similar. So it's about $229 for the 8 gigabyte version. That's RAM, 8 gigs of RAM, or $269 for the 12 gigabyte. I think depending on what you want to do with this, if you're looking to use it mostly for like Game Boy Advance, I suppose you could use it for DS games. You're probably fine with the 8 gig version. If you're really trying to run GameCube games on this, I would argue that this might not be the right handheld for that, but you could do it. I would get the 12 gigabyte version. Another one coming out is the Ayeneo or Conquer Pocket Advance. I made fun of the name a couple of weeks ago because Conquer is a hilarious name for a Game Boy Advance handheld. This one is a premium Android handheld. It kind of mimics the classic horizontal like Game Boy Advance shape. Adds a 3x2 screen for like perfect scaling of the Game Boy Advance games, but also allows you to do 3D games with a couple extra buttons. We really haven't seen too much of this yet. It was just unveiled. I watched a little bit of a very long teaser, like live stream video of the people showing it off. So you can see a little bit of that on the YouTube version of the show. That's expected sometime this fall. And then one more is the Anbernic RG35XXSP, which sounds really long, but it's basically the RG35 is a whole line of these handheld consoles. And this one is mimicking the Game Boy Advance SP. So the reviews for this have been stellar. Like Russ from Retro Gamecore praises this as absolutely nailing the Game Boy Advance SP clamshell design. It is like the perfect affordable Game Boy machine. If you want your kids to be able to play original Game Boy Advance games and you're into emulation, this might be the way to do that. You can get this on Anbernic's website. You can also order it from Amazon, though I think you'll pay a little bit more if you get it through Amazon. It's very affordable, though. we're talking like between $55 and $75, depending on where you get it from. So fantastic, especially for a younger kid. I've really praised these handhelds that keep the controls close to the screen so that a young kid can see what button they're pressing as they're learning to get like a feel for the gaming controller. So with that, let's jump over to a little soapbox moment. The soapbox segment is the closest that I'll get to a rant most of the time, and hopefully it's a rant that I've thought about a little bit, and maybe it gives you something to think about as well. So last week I made a mistake, kind of. I clipped a piece of this show, which I usually try to put out a couple of shorts online just to kind of give people a flavor for what the show is about. I'm trying to find my people, and I'm having a hard time doing that with just shorts, but sometimes that's a good way to connect with people around the little ideas that are a part of this show. And the piece that I clipped of this show was the part that I said the consumer is largely to blame for the death of physical media. And then I put it out there. And I should have known that this is a hot button issue. And it's maybe one that doesn't represent the positive heart of this show as well. But I'm kind of glad that I did because it dragged up an argument into the open that I keep seeing pop up, or different versions of this pop up. And so I wanted to address it head on. Here's the argument that I've been seeing. If companies are doing things we don't like, they're not selling us physical copies anymore. They're not selling us software to own. They're selling us the right to use it, and we don't like that. And a lot of people online are saying that the valid response to that is piracy. And I want to make the case that this is what I would call a logical fallacy. It's a jump in logic that actually doesn't add up. So let's walk through why. Somebody I went back and forth with online a little bit. I'll kind of paraphrase what he said because his actual comments were a little unhinged. His argument was, pirate everything you can until commerce becomes fair. And we actually agreed on a part of this. You can't blame companies. Something you said earlier was you can't blame companies for making choices based on money, because money isn't just a unit of exchange. It's actually information. It tells a company what people want more of and what they want less of. And that's like the system working the way that it's supposed to. But his conclusion to the system not working the way it's supposed to was that since companies are chasing money and I don't like their choices, I get to just take the thing anyway. And I said, no, I actually reject piracy as the solution. You can choose to spend your money on the studios and the indies and the people that you'd rather support instead. That is how you vote in this system of commerce. And he actually responded to me, which usually I don't get into back and forth online. This is as close as I got. His response was basically, you don't get to mess up, paraphrasing again, and still get people's money. So I get the emotion behind that, but that's actually not how fair trade works. So fair trade is you offer me something and I decide if it's worth my money or my time, and we'll make an exchange. And if I don't like the price or I don't like the terms, I don't buy it. That is withholding my vote. And what I don't get to do is to take the thing anyway because I personally decided that I deserved it. I don't. Nobody does. That's not how the world works. I don't deserve something from somebody else who spent their time and their effort building this thing. There's a hashtag going around. This is kind of the second part of this, that if buying isn't owning, piracy isn't stealing. And this might be one of the kind of laziest arguments that I've seen floating around the internet. It sounds really nice on paper, but it actually doesn't hold up if you think about it. Think about renting a hotel room. You're renting kind of the bed, the lamp, the TV, the use of all of it for a set window of time. You have a check-in time and a check-out time. That's in the terms and conditions. Now imagine that I checked out and just take the TV with me. And I say, well, renting isn't owning, so taking this TV isn't stealing. Nobody accepts that. Everybody would look at you and say, that is absurd. You paid to rent this, not to keep that. Now, I would use the same logic with software. Companies can choose to sell you a license instead of ownership. Now, you're allowed to not like that. You can say, I don't want the right to play your game for a while. I want to own it. And then you can choose to not buy it. That's a completely legitimate response. What's not legitimate, though, is deciding that the terms don't apply to you just because you don't like them. So I'll give a little bit of ground here and say that there's a real conversation to be had around old, like out of print type games that aren't available for sale anymore, where the original maker isn't getting compensated either way. We already recognize this legally with books and characters. Like after a certain amount of time, things move into the public domain. Preservation is a fair kind of separate conversation, but that's not what people are really arguing when they slap this hashtag on a brand new release. Here's kind of the last piece of this, because I've seen this one too. People saying that it's fine to pirate from EA or Ubisoft because they're huge and they won't even notice. But pirating from an indie developer or a solo person who's worked on something for 2 years in their apartment, that's not okay. The problem is you can't build a moral framework that only applies once a company gets big enough. That is exactly the logic that corporations use to justify treating the consumer badly in the first place. We're big, and so the rules are different from us. If we try to turn this around and use that same logic against them, we haven't really fixed anything. We've just become a part of the problem that we were mad at in the first place. So that's my piece. If a company changes the deal, if they don't deliver what they told you they were going to deliver, that is a real issue that we can raise. And there's a real conversation to have there about, were you clear about this change from owning software to having the right to use it? But I don't like your price or I don't like your terms doesn't unlock the right to take it anyway. You've still got to vote. It's just your wallet and not the ability to pirate something. The game list this week is a little shorter. There's not a ton of stuff. There's a few things that have come out in the last week or so. There's a few that are coming out later in August, but kind of quiet on that front. So Halo Campaign Evolved came out on July 28th this week. It is the Unreal Engine 5 remake of the original Halo title. Definitely, if you have Game Pass, you should go play this because it's available to you now, not just the folks that pre-ordered it and got it a couple of days early. A couple of smaller games are coming out this week. Big Walk is coming out on PlayStation Plus. That is from the makers of Untitled Goose Game, that goofy game about the goose. This one is also kind of a goofy game, but it's an open world puzzle game that's designed around cooperative multiplayer with friends. Audio plays a big role in this one. So being able to call out to your friends on audio, I don't know if it's really going to have the same appeal with people in the same room, but definitely if you play with folks that are far away from you and use voice chat a lot, this would be a fun one to check out. It is coming to, PlayStation Plus on August 4th. And then another one that's kind of an indie title is Corsair Cove. This one is coming to Xbox Game Pass. It is a really bright, pirate-themed adventure game. It's focused on strategy, kind of building up your base, commerce. It feels a little like a Command and Conquer or Age of Mythology type game, but also has some exploration and combat in it. And it is rated teen, I assume, because it's pirates, and pirates don't always do nice things. See my comments on digital piracy in the last segment, I guess. But that one looks like it could be kind of fun, and it's coming to Game Pass. A couple of games for the kids, family-friendly games. Splatoon Raiders is already out, but man, the reviews have been coming in for that game, and they look really good. So this one's on my list to play. I just started playing Metroid Prime 4 this week that my kids got me for my birthday, and so I've been having fun with that one. But Splatoon has a special place in my heart. My kids really love Splatoon, so it's exciting to have a first-player game that's really first player focused, unlike the past titles where you've had a campaign mode in it, but it's really not fully fleshed out, I didn't feel. So I think it's exciting to have a first player Splatoon game. Another game called Restory is releasing on August 6th. This one is a simulation game where you manage an electronics repair shop and clean and fix classic hardware and gaming hardware in particular. We're talking PSPs and Game Boys, and it looks really unique. It looks kind of fun. Now, I will say, maybe if you're technologically inclined at all, it would be better to just go buy some stuff on eBay and fix it and then sell it and turn an actual profit. But if you want to do that just as a cozy game, this one might be one to check out. If your kids are interested in fixing stuff, a couple weeks ago, I repaired a couple of Joy-Cons that we have that started to get stick drift. So I got some Hall effect joysticks for them and replaced the joystick, mostly successfully. But my kids were like super interested in seeing, this is what it looks like when it comes apart. This is how you fix it. I learned things along the way, so I could see this being a good kind of introduction to how do you repair electronics if your kids in particular are interested in that. I already mentioned Super Mario Sunshine coming to Nintendo Switch Online. We don't have a date yet, but sometime in August that will happen. A few things. So Microsoft usually announces what games are leaving Game Pass around mid-month, so we don't have that information quite yet. But PlayStation Plus is losing a handful of games on August 18th, and they include Unicorn Overlord, which is a fantasy RPG. If you start now, you might have time to finish it before it leaves PlayStation Plus. Maybe you play enough of it to realize that you love the game and you're going to buy it instead of just play it via subscription. Another cool game I wanted to highlight is Harold Halibut. This is a handmade stop-motion adventure game, which is really cool. So I'm a big fan of animation, of stop motion, and this one they actually created like physical models and then did the stop motion photography in order to make the motion actions. And then they brought those files into a modern engine and actually made the game with those files. So it's like playing a video game that's based in stop motion. So I am going to have to check this one out. I had heard about it, but hadn't actually seen it until this week. Another game called Roki is a Scandinavian puzzle adventure game. So this one looks like a really fun kind of delving into Scandinavian mythology. I will say it has a really cute and fun art style. I really like the art style that it has, but definitely has some stuff that might be a little scary for younger kids. Turns out Scandinavian folklore has a little bit of scary content in it. Some of these stories were probably used to keep kids in bed at night, if you know what I mean. So maybe do a little bit of previewing before you let your kids watch that one. Finally, there's one called Bomber Crew, which is a strategic simulation game. That one is it's a weird mix of World War II simulation and like strategy, but also with pixelated me-like characters and a sense of humor, at least in the trailer. So you might want to check that one out. Kind of a good example of a unique game that you might want to try first and decide, is this something that I really want to play? That brings us to the end of today's show. For the most part, I wanted to add one more segment to the show, which is called the Mailbag. So I do get a couple of emails now and then at thisisthegameadventure@gmail.com. If you want to send me your thoughts, if you think that one of my hot takes was not so hot and I might be wrong, I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your perspective. Part of the reason that I'm doing this show is I want to have more conversations with people around this medium of video games that I really enjoy and I think can be a good place for people to connect. So if you want to connect with me, that's one way to do it. You can also leave something in the comments, which is where most of these came from this week. One person said that they play games on PC, and that has kind of been an excuse to abandon physical media because it really doesn't exist anymore for PCs, but they would buy it if they could. And so I would redirect that question and say, hey, check out the people that are making their own physical games. There's another guy that I saw that is making like cartridges for his games using SD memory cards and is making like tiny little box art. It's fantastic. I love it. So you don't like that there's no physical media, you can't actually make it. So if you are a PC gamer, there are actually ways that you can continue to do that. And maybe people will start asking for physical PC games again. I don't anticipate that will be the case, but it's possible. Another person said that we've willingly gone in this direction by buying discless consoles. Yes, I am certainly to blame. So when I say the consumer is to blame for the loss of physical media, I'm included in that. I definitely bought a discless Xbox. because it was cheaper. I was buying a lot of my games digitally anyway, and I just didn't really think it mattered that much. Looking back, maybe I would have said, maybe I should have bought one with a disc if I really cared that much about physical media. So that's definitely partially on us. And then I also talked to somebody in person this week about their PS5 that they just bought. And they said, we actually use the Blu-ray player in our PS5 more for Blu-rays and playing media and like actual Blu-ray movies that we have than I'm using them for games. And so that's like a side benefit of having a large Blu-ray collection. I don't have to somehow store these digitally someplace. I don't have to stream them. I just pop in the disc and I play it. And we've been using that on the PS5. So yeah, that's an argument for buying something with a disc drive in it that plays Blu-rays. I think that's awesome. If you have thoughts or comments on anything that I have said today, anything in this episode, you have something that you'd like me to talk about or cover, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at thisisthegameadventure at gmail.com. You can also go to thegameadventure.com and sign up for the email list. Email list subscribers are going to get basically 1 day early access to the YouTube version of this show. And they'll also get exclusive access to things that are coming down the pipe later this fall, like a Discord server, if you want to have ongoing conversations with people about video games. So I hope you have a fantastic week. I will see you again next week, same time, same place. The Retro Rerun. Oh yeah, it's bad today. I don't know why.